everyone, and welcome back to Talk Brussels. We are
Isabel.
and Ioana, and we welcome you back to our first episode of the podcast for a subject that you chose after we asked you on Spotify what would you like us to talk about. And the winning point has been,
Women in the EU bubble.
for me, this title, Women in the Bubble, leads me to two powerful names in the international arena at the moment, Roberta Metsola and Ursula von der Leyen, as I believe they have two of the most important jobs in the world. And comes into my mind a question is up. What is power for you?
Power in general, you mean? Like a more general connotation of power?
Yes, the first thing that comes into your mind when you hear the word power.
I think that power for me is a mixture in between influence and respect, in a way. It can also lead to fear, but for me, the most important area is influence and trust and respect. Yeah.
So why am I asking you this? It's because reflecting, I realized that this has not been the case in the past, like to have women in powerful positions or like influential positions. Because, for instance, Ursula von der Leyen is the first president of the European Commission, which has been operating for around 60 years. And to have a first president as a woman, for me, this is one of the greatest achievements. And also, like Roberta Metsola, the third woman in the function of European Parliament president, which again, for me, this looks like a success, yet a success for our contemporary times. But there comes a thought into my mind that why in the past this was not usual to have women in powerful positions. I'm seeing nowadays that we are trying more and more and we are changing more and more this mindset, and we start to have more presence of women in certain fields.
Yeah. Actually, it's true that something that I have reflected about a lot, maybe because it's the area that you and I have been working in for a while, there is less presence of women in certain fields. That is for sure. I think that in society that happens in a lot of areas. For example, it's mentioned that a lot of engineer careers are mainly led by men. They're not attractive enough, they say, no, for women, which I don't really agree with that, but that's okay. But I think that in our fields like politics and economics, I think they would be actually one of the most influential areas in society, but is the less populated by women. The other day, it was a nice experience. The other day, our friend Carolina, hello girl, she invited me to go with her to a Women in Economics event. They were making a presentation by Marcella Corsi, who is a professor of economics at the University of Sapienza in Rome. And she was giving a introductory talk about Claudia Golding. Claudia Golding this year has received, well, in 2023, she received the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences for her studies on women in the labor market. So this professor of economics at Harvard, she was one of the first ones to receive this award. And as you were mentioning in your first point, it took this amount of years for her to be that woman who wins a Nobel Prize on economics. And it's true that I feel like we have a lot of women in our surroundings in the economic area that we are in. But I think this is a changing point. This is a novelty. So politics is the same. In the end, a lot of women doubt themselves very much. A lot of women have imposter syndrome, which we both, I think, we're familiar with. Because we feel like, it's connected to a never-ending doubting about ourselves and our capacity to actually be part of certain fields because we haven't been in the past. We are actually able to be part of these areas and enjoy them and profit from them and actually make them better, and that is amazing. Of course, I think that we all have, as women, certain issues that we confront still at work every day and that we will have to change. And my question to you, Joanna, in this case is, what is a something, a thought, an intrusive thought, a worry that you might have about your job or your professional development? What is something that comes to your mind and you say, actually, this is an issue for me still today?
You mentioned the imposter syndrome. One thing that it has been going on in my life since I was little was this sexualization. So let me explain you what I'm trying to say through this. I thought that people were choosing me for certain things only because of my appearances. So it was more about the judgment based on the physical appearance and, behavior than my values or like my intelligence. And this has been with me for a long time, even though, for instance, I proved myself so many times that everything that I set out to do, and I had professional roles that I really wanted. Or it was the other way around. I was thinking that people don't choose me because I'm not beautiful enough or I'm not intelligent enough or etc. So I was taking it so personally, and I realized that there are many other factors in the process and I should relax a bit.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. And actually it's a very interesting point because I feel like the sexualization at the professional world is something that at some point affects also men. Because it's true that, if someone is handsome or someone is pretty,
Yeah,
they're in the equal terms on there.
I agree.
But it's true that for women it's limiting. It's limiting even for the self-esteem of the woman that is on that job, because you start worrying much more about your physical appearance or how people are going to think about you, and you live completely out of that scheme how good you actually are, how big is your potential. And imposter syndrome is something that happens to men and women. But it's true that around me, in the EU bubble, the majority of people that have told me, look, I am actually suffering, are women. And that's a reality, The other day, one of my friends sent me a reel on Instagram, which said, I'm going to read it to you. Meta imposter syndrome. When you know a lot of people have imposter syndrome, but you've witnessed how competent they are. So they are not like you. They are real imposters. And in the reel, the back image is a woman. So it's like, I'm sorry, but there is this never-ending pressure on women that, well, in some areas, men don't have as much, I would say. But you were saying, I would like to listen about what you have also to say about that, because you were saying that you have suffered a lot of imposter syndrome yourself. If you could give a younger, or maybe someone our age or someone older right now, an advice on that, what would it be? What is something that you do to actually make you feel a bit more empowered as a woman here, in your profession?
I think just encouraging yourself more, even if you're doing a mistake or even if you disappoint in yourself today, it doesn't mean that it is forever. It's just everything is temporary in life, the good and the bad. But just don't be too harsh on yourself. I've been too harsh on myself, and I know from experience that it does not result in the best outcomes, emotionally speaking, which now I'm trying to be more kind to myself and have more confidence even when I fail. Because from the failure I will definitely learn something new. From all the experiences we learn something new. Achieving the little tasks at work, or eating my fruits one day, or having my 30 minutes walk, these are things that of course release dopamine and so serotonin in my brain and helps me step by step strengthening my confidence, which I believe it's primordial, because without confidence I cannot have that power that we were talking about, because now I could also link it with inner power. So believe in yourself more, and this is first an advice for myself and then the ones that listen to this podcast. But now, because you asked me this, I'm curious to know, what is your piece of advice for the women out there?
Therapy. Therapy. Well, for me, I do an exercise on myself. I learned this exercise when I was at the beginning of my career in Brussels. And there I was really feeling, I was feeling so lost. And since I started my university years and then I dived into the professional world, I love talking to students about the EU. It's something I do on my free time. It's something I do at work. And of course, part of our role talking to young people is explaining them what we do. How can you get to where I am? That's a bit of inspirational point, no? And one thing that made me feel very nice about my job and myself on that was explaining something that for me was very easy to a public that really didn't know what I was talking about. And then they had questions that I could actually answer back without double checking, without doubting. And I was actually correct. And I repeated this exercise when I began to be a bit more senior in my job. So my hierarchy would tell me, okay, you train this trainee now. And then I would see how they would develop themselves with what I was teaching them. And at that point, I thought, shit, if they are learning out of my explanations, it means that I know what I'm doing. And also second, to my lovely women listening to this podcast, is to put yourselves out there a bit more. A lot of my male colleagues and male friends don't really doubt themselves to a point that it blocks their opportunities in the future. They know they might not be the best for a position, but they still apply to that position and they still go to the interview. And then they get the jobs and they learn in the jobs. And sometimes I feel like women, we're thinking that if we are not 100% technicals or we are not super cultivated in a topic, we cannot actually work on that topic. And to be honest, that's not true. You learn by doing. I think we should switch a bit that mindset.
I agree, and I could also add that after my first traineeship in the EU institutions, I was asked to be a mentor for the next trainees. And I asked my advisor, why me? And she was like, you're one of the most confident persons that I've seen, and you know what you're doing. And I'm like, okay. And that was not the first time I was hearing this from someone that is like from the professional side and also in my personal life. But somehow my inner self was not believing them that much because I was not confident, even though I was having one of my dream jobs, let's say. The role that I was doing, it was what I wanted. But yes, I think it's a bit of a process. You just have to be consistent with believing in yourself.
And if I may add, I think that there is also a lot of unspoken regarding youth women candidates to positions. I think it's in general. I also lived this in my past experiences outside the bubble. But I feel like in political arenas, you know, these cases in which, for example, they're going to ask the youth, no? And they say, I'm going to ask the youth about European affairs. Let's ask them about Erasmus. And it's like, look, maybe that 24-year-old want to talk about rule of law or regional development. And I feel like we have to start trusting more our youth. Like young people nowadays are incredibly well trained and women are super well trained. To be honest, in my case, I've been extremely lucky with the hierarchy I've had. 100%, I cannot complain because all of them, without exception, believed in me despite my young age and gave me a chance when maybe in some other areas they wouldn't have given me the chance. So for me, they are examples of what older generations should be doing. Listen to the youth, trust in their potential, like give them a chance. They cannot be trainees for 3 years. Some traineeships are still non-paid. So I feel like we're mistreating youth a bit in every area of society.
I agree. We could make a really good team with older generations, especially if the older generations, again, are open to welcome the young people. In my experience of work, that melanged really well, and I'm really happy with my experience in this part. Yeah. So we're supporting this.
And actually, talking about hierarchy, and one thing that it always comes to my mind in a way is the importance of women supporting women in general in life. But I think it's really key on this area of work because, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's rather new that we have a lot of women in certain power positions. And I feel like you can feel a bit misplaced sometimes. And it feels really nice to have, at least from my side, I think it feels really nice to have people you can look up or, people you can base yourself about that are women. Do you have any example of a woman that has been key in your professional life or personal life that you think, wow, I would like to treat other women like she treated me?
Actually, I do, and it's my mom because she believed in me more than I believed in myself, and she somehow taught me how to believe in myself. She opened my eyes whenever I had them closed, looking at what I have achieved. But in the good and bad experience with women, I will focus on the good because, for instance, one of the jobs that I really wanted was advised by my tutor who was a woman. And before that, I had some examples of women that really did not look at me as a young professional that really wants to work towards building a career. So women that already had their positions, they were not willing to help. And me being present there would not change anything, their role or their positions. They did not help me. Yet, for one of the positions my mentor helped me, she was not afraid of jeopardizing her job or status, etc. So she was not intimidated, let's say, by another woman, or she was not reticent in helping another woman, which I really appreciated. And I felt like somehow in the professional area it's not common to have this kind of help from other women. And when I say help, I'm referring to help as an advice, support, recommendation of a job, or like agreeing to have a look over the cover letter, or a coffee, networking, things like that.
Well, of course, in my case, I think my mom also played a very important role in myself, in my life, because she helped me. I mean, she believed in me, as you said, and she trusted me and she raised me. So I will forever be grateful for her. But it's true that in my professional life, if I think about mentoring people who have actually and hierarchy, that have actually taken the time to train me, and they were mostly men. I don't think I have had the chance to have a lot of women that could mentor me around. I have thought long about it, and why is this? I mean, sometimes it was mostly because some of the colleagues I had or hierarchy I had were not really dedicated to train me, or I mean, I've had cases where they didn't treat me well at all, huh? Women like colleagues. But I think that it's also very important to notice that older generations of women that are working in very difficult positions have made their lives in very men-centered worlds in which it was very difficult for them to have a position. It was very difficult for them to maintain that position. And I think that the dynamics in between them were probably not the same ones as we have nowadays. I mean, I think we could say that intergenerational dynamics have changed over the years. That is for sure. Meaning that maybe the support that women were giving to women in some areas was limited because they were really busy trying to keep the positions they had. But this being said, I've had colleagues that I have loved. I have really looked up to, even if they didn't know, and I still do. But it's true that all or the majority of the mentorships I've had come from men. I have tried my best to have mentorships coming for women, but it was not successful. So, well, I mean, I really hope I can have mentors in my future that are women and that I can look up to. But I feel like our generation has improved a lot on that because I feel like we feel we have more opportunities. We feel we have the space in most of areas. And so we love supporting each other. And I really love my friends for that. I think I can thank my girlfriends for that. Because when I have an imposter syndrome moment, when I have anxiety, they are there to support me. Like, for example, when I arrived, talking about imposter syndrome, when we arrived to Brussels and I started working in institutions and I started feeling very bad about it, one of my friends here, Anna, hi, Anna, she gave me a book about imposter syndrome so I could understand better what was happening to me. and I could overcome it, you know? And that was a girlfriend. I mean, it was a girlfriend giving me this book. And it's also my girlfriends listen me to my endless moments of anxiety at work, you know, like you. I mean, how many times have you come to me at work and say, look, hey, I'm blocked.
But it's vice versa.
Yeah.
Literally. I've been so lucky to have colleagues like you.
Yeah.
It's crazy important,
Yeah.
the support. And also, I really appreciate that we can do that. We see beyond ideas that somehow the society imposes on us.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate this kind of people, and I really appreciate women that are this open-minded.
Yeah.
Just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You too. I just love having these conversations with friends. The other day, for example, we were having a conversation, and it's a friend I met at work also. Not from our current, work, but in the past. And it's a friend that I really appreciate, and I think she was one of the biggest and best discoveries I've had. We were talking about work dreams. Where would you like to go? Actually, she works on the area I would like to work at. Okay. And she works with the topics that I would love to touch upon. And when we talk about it, when she tells me she wants to achieve whatever in whatever position, I'm like, go girl, go get it. And if I can help her getting it, I will. And if that opportunity never arrives to me, it's fine, because it doesn't arrive to you doesn't mean that it shouldn't arrive to any other women. And now, following on this topic of women supporting other women, because I really want to know your opinion. During Christmas, this is not a new topic in my life in Brussels. It's a topic that is recurrent. I think that people who know me can say that I'm very classic in the way I dress, in the way so I'm not crazy about dyeing my hair and stuff like that. I've never done it. It's my way. But I have friends who are very alternative on this behalf. I really enjoy when they do those things because they look more like themselves, like, for example, this Christmas, one of my best friends here, she dyed her hair pink.
Super nice, by the way.
She looked beautiful with it. And she told me something that made me a bit sad because she was like, yeah, I'm going to wear the pink hair while I am in Spain, but I will go back to my natural hair color when I come back to Brussels because she works in legal, okay? And she was very afraid that she was not going to be taken seriously if she arrived to the office with pink hair. And I was fuming, to be honest with you, because it's like, when are we going to stop tagging women, measuring the value of a woman, but how she looks? Do you feel like maybe the area that we are working at in the bubble might need a bit of modernization on this regard?
Oh, for sure. And I think we are starting, and I have a really good example, a woman MEP that I follow on LinkedIn. Her name is Anika Oyala, and I simply adore her tattoos. She's showing off every single day. So the tattoos on her body are simply art, and she's always posting on LinkedIn saying, why do we still in 2024 judge a person on the appearance? She's an MEP. Did I say that? If I did, I'm repeating. She's an MEP. She looks like this, really beautiful, by the way. And I think it's the moment we start to normalize the personality and character and appearance of everybody around us, because this does not mean that, for instance, if you have a tattoo or a pink hair or like a pierce, does not mean that you are less professional or less intelligent. We are keeping our qualities regardless of our appearance.
Yeah.
And I can give also a little example with myself. In the past, I was a local councillor in my country. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were organizing the political campaign, and I had blonde hair that I was always dyeing, like in turquoise, pink, purple,
So cool.
blue, you name it. I wanted to discover these colors and to see how they fit me. But during the campaign, I stopped coloring the blonde hair because I was afraid of how I would look officially serious with those colors in my hair, because usually the society portrays you as not that serious if you're a bit different.
Yeah.
So I did it back then for the sake of officiality, but I would not do it again today. And this was 4 years ago. Now I have a different mindset, a more open minded one, which I'm really proud of. And I feel like I'm embracing myself and my style better and with more love and appreciation and acceptance, which I believe we all should do. What do you think?
Bravo.
And yeah, again, as you mentioned, this includes the men as well. If they have a tattoo, they're like, oh, you're the bad type.
Yeah, yeah, I have
The
friends.
not that serious type.
I have men friends here who have tattoos, and they cannot go to work if they don't cover their whole arm sometimes. So that piece of art he has in his arm has costed a lot of money, and it needs to be shown.
Pain.
Of course, it's. I mean, I'm sorry, but sometimes it's like if you go to a museum, and when you go into the museum, they cover the paint. It's like, no, I mean, when you go to a museum, you cover it. No, you see it and you enjoy it and you appreciate it. So I feel like people who wear tattoos, they have been tattooed by a tattoo artist. So come on. And lastly, we would like to finish this podcast with something that touches us very personally, I think, everyone that listens right now. And that is, it is something that is increasingly becoming a key part of women in Brussels, which is safety on the streets. I have to say that since I moved to Brussels in 2020, I've had more problematic and dangerous experiences on the street by myself that I've had in the past. I was looking into this issue and I found a Brussels Times article from January 2022, which said that a recent study, so from back in 2021 or 2022, found that young women and girls in Brussels, Antwerp, and Charleroi found that 91% said they had been sexually harassed in public spaces. I mean, 91%. I can definitely say I have lived this. I can definitely say my friends have lived this. And I definitely say this is becoming problematic to a point. So my question to you, Joanna, in your time in Brussels, could you share with us what are your thoughts about this topic?
Yes, I was also harassed, but not necessarily in Brussels in the past. However, for me, the experiences in Brussels do not lead me to the conclusions that you have. Yet, I've heard around that women have been somehow aggressed on the streets at different hours. Yet, me, I'm the type of person that I'm more outgoing in what sense? For instance, if I want to come back from the center city to my house, which is not far away and it's not in a dangerous neighborhood, I mean, define dangerous for me. If it's central, I feel it's safer.
Not for me, but I mean, this like the experiences.
Yeah, correct. I feel like I live in a safe neighborhood. Therefore, I choose to walk home at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning without feeling afraid of anything. Because so far in Brussels, I did not encounter a bad experience. Only once there was a guy that appeared during the night next to me trying to have a conversation and was making a lot of sexual comments on my way of dressing. By the way, it was not something incredibly sexy. It was a skirt, but apparently when some men see a skirt, they see already something sexual and something that they can explore. But what is my main point? I think I will continue to do what I do because I want to normalize that even being a woman on the streets at that hour, I should be as confident and as powerful, in quotation marks, as a man. I want to have that safety. Why not me? Because I'm a woman and a man can walk at 3 in the morning, but I cannot because I'm afraid of that man, for instance, or like another woman. I don't know, you name it, or animals we don't have around. But okay.
I'm never afraid of another woman. Let's face it. I mean, I've never been in that position where I'm like, oh my god, another woman. Let me change.
You never know, but I mean, I want to somehow normalize in my head that I could be as normal as a man walking on the streets during the night.
I think that my point for this might differ also from yours, because actually my memories I'm from Madrid, in Spain, and my memories since I'm a teenager and I started going out at night in Madrid have always been, or most of the time, have been good. I live in a very central area of Madrid. I used to hang out and go to nightclubs and stuff in the center of Madrid, and I would go by myself on a walk back home at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. And I never encountered any problem. You can be catcalled. That is something that I feel like every woman suffer, even at 3 p.m. on the busiest street, you can be catcalled. But I've never feared for my safety. I feel like in Brussels, I have feared deeply for my safety, at least in 2 or 3 occasions. I can give you an example on one in which I was coming from a friend's house who used to live 3 streets away from me. It was Thursday, it was 11:30 p.m. And I was calling my mom, like I do every night. And I noticed that on my way up towards my street, there was a van that was passing next to me. They lowered the speed, and there were 2 men inside who were looking at me and telling me things. I was afraid, I have to say. I was alone at home. So it's also this thing of, if I don't come back home, no one notices. And I continued walking, and they continued being next to me. And I'm lucky because in my street, when you're about to enter my house, there is like a deviation. So you cannot really continue straight, you know? If you're a car, you have to go one way or another. And they took one of the ways. And of course, I pretended I didn't live where I lived because I didn't want them to know. And when they continued on one street, I ran towards my house super quickly. And I felt so powerless. And that's my point. I hate that as women, you have to feel powerless and you feel like you cannot protect yourself. And it's like, we should not be feeling that way. I should have the same chance as other people, as other men, of going to my friend's house and coming back home and feeling completely safe. And of course, this is ongoing. With every girlfriend I have talked to about this, they have horror stories. Mm. And that was also my point, that it saddens me that's still happening in 2024.
Just wanted to add that when I'm going home at that hour, for instance, I have to put my masculine coat on me, somehow encouraging myself, you can do this, you are safe, because you are a normal person on the street. Mm-hmm. That you also have other people on the street, so it's okay for you also to be on the street. But I do have to switch myself in a more powerful, stronger mode, like more masculine. I feel like when I'm walking on the street at that hour, I'm switching somehow. I don't let the feminine lead, but more in my masculine part.
But you see the awful part about that? Yeah. I mean, that is the issue. Yeah. You have to feel like you're super strong. Exactly. You know, like, yeah, I can fight you. But no, probably I cannot fight you because I'm not 190 and I haven't learned karate at school. You know what I mean? So why do I have to defend myself? Let me be. Leave me be.
And again, I say at that hour in the night. But, like, even in my neighborhood that I said that it's safe, one of my friends, she was followed home at 9 in the evening, just like by a random guy. So it doesn't necessarily has to be an hour during the night or in the evening, but usually when it's darker, we are more susceptible to this kind of experiences. But still, being a woman, it's in general on the streets, it's not the safest thing. Mm-hmm. And that is not normal still in 2024, unfortunately. How can we alleviate this? To be continued.
So that was it. Wow. Time flies. Thank you very much, everyone, for sticking to the end of the podcast with us. We are very excited about this journey and we would like to hear more about your thoughts. Please leave us your comments about what you thought, what would you like to see next. We will leave you a little survey with new topics that you can select from and you can hear from us in the next episode. So just a caveat, please remember, everything that we have covered in here is our personal opinion. Thank you very much and have a nice week.
Bye.
Bye.